Hey everybody, it is about 3:36, so I still got plenty of time before my nephew possibly gets dropped off and my mom shows up from work. Um, but I thought I'd talk about something, and you can see the title down below. I want to talk about the overall Scooby-Doo franchise, and more importantly, the television shows and incarnations that we have gotten throughout the years. And we've gotten quite a lot of incarnations of Scooby throughout the years. I mean, it's really hard not to fathom how much we've gotten out of this canine. I mean, especially the fact that when you think about it, it's essentially going on 45, or if you just want to look at it straight, just year by year and not birthday wise or anniversary wise. It's actually been 44 to now almost 45 years of this guy. It's unbelievable. And the various shows that he's had throughout the years are really just very memorable and always fun to watch. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more from Hanna-Barbera at that time. Because you got to realize, even when the show was first introduced, the show was first created, Hanna-Barbera was still at the process of cranking out new characters or new shows based around certain franchises. I mean, Hanna-Barbera was basically the king of Saturday mornings. I mean, there was not one station, even up into the 80s, that you did not tune in on you did not change the channel from, let's say, NBC to ABC, and there was not a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. They dominated the market, and Scooby helped them dominate it, no doubt about it. So let's take a look at the history here, and if you don't see any title cards or anything, I do apologize. If you just see one picture, which you probably will or something, then again, I apologize. Hold on for a second. Sorry about that. I thought I saw one of my brother-in-law's cars drive by. I was wondering what the heck he would have been doing here. But anyway, let's take a look again at these franchises. And again, like I say, if you only see one picture, that's fine. I'll try my best, but probably still only going to be one picture. So again, I apologize. But let's take a look at the first one. Let's talk about the first one, which of course was the original Where Are You? Now this ran from its initial year to about 1971, 72, 71, 72 being about reruns and so forth. And the show was called, of course, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And it premiered on CBS Saturday mornings. And it premiered to critical acclaim. Now, of course, if you look back at the history of this, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Originally wasn't supposed to be as it was. It was going to be a little darker, a little scarier, but CBS said, hey, we want the series, but we need you to tone it down a little bit. We need you to add something to it. Add an element that'll make it endearing to the entire families. And more importantly, the kids. And lo and behold, before you knew it, Scooby-Doo was created, and away they went. And they were still dark and everything, but the element that they gave to it, the pattern, the element and pattern that kept viewers and kids of all ages coming back for more, from the very first episode, What a Night for a Night, was established. And that was the fact that, okay, you didn't know what ghost or creature they were going to face, but you always knew was somebody under a mask. And sometimes that somebody would be, maybe out of the blue, maybe would be someone out of the blue. But most of the time it would be like a criminal on the run. or bank robber or something like that on the run and in hiding. So by doing so, by hiding all that, they had to change who they were. And of course, it would always sometimes be somebody that the Mystery Inc. gang would meet up with, probably associate with a little bit, and then later turn out to be who they've been looking for, who was behind the entire situation. Now, this continued for 2 seasons of Where Are You? Now, surprisingly, Where Are You also had a 3rd season, if you will, if you want to look at it as its 3rd season. And according to various sources, including when you go to a store like, say, Walmart, or go to Amazon.com and you look for it online, it's there. There was a lost 3rd season. And these were episodes that were essentially aired during the late to mid 1970s. And these were episodes that were supposedly supposed to be part of the original run, but weren't. These were actually episodes that were aired later on. And again, it still carried the same element and everything, and it was very good. I mean, you could not get enough of it. Now, after the original series run, in 1972, a new series was created, and it became one of the first 1-hour at Saturday morning cartoons. You see, at that time, and even to this day, you rarely saw or had 1-hour animated cartoons on Saturday mornings. Rarely. You had 1-hour shows. But here, you did. And it was dubbed the new Scooby-Doo Movies. Now, the reason for that title, of course, was the fact that it was running for 1 hour on Saturday mornings. And of course, initially, if you take out the commercials, you're looking at 44 to 45 minutes. But I digress. Still, it was dubbed as 1 hour Saturday morning movies. It was a series basically presented in 1 hour movie format. That's why, again, it was entitled New Scooby-Doo Movies. But the unique factor about this was, first of all, they kept the same formula as they did with Where Are You, but they changed it up a bit. They did. Yeah, I'm not lying. They changed it up a bit. Because there was about maybe 1 or 2 occasions where they had to change it up, and the situations were not as what we had been used to from Where Are You. I'm not lying, folks. I'm totally not lying. Anyway, Where Are You? I mean, not Where Are You, but the new Scooby-Doo movies had besides, again, keeping the same formula as before from Where Are You with with an exception or so, and I'll get into that when I talk more about the uniqueness of the new Scooby-Doo movies. And that unique factor that I'm trying to get to was the fact that you always had celebrity guest stars. That's right. You would always have celebrity guest stars, and sometimes they would voice themselves. And a majority of the time, these celebrities would voice themselves. I'm not lying. They would voice themselves in the episode. I'm not lying. And sometimes you would have impersonators doing them as well. And some of the celebrities, of course, that they met, would be sometimes long gone. If you know what I mean. For example, two of the celebrities they met were easy for me to say. Lauren and Hardy. That comedic duo from the 20s, 30s, and I think even the 40s. Well, they ended up meeting them, and you had voice impersonators doing them. And I think this was also at a time, because this was another unique element as well, and I'll get into that in a bit. But this was at a time when, again, I think these guys were long gone already. But they still met them. He still met them and had a mystery with them. Now, there were several times where celebrities would appear more than once. Probably the most popular guest appearances, if you will, were the Harlem Globetrotters. Now, the one unique thing about it, though, and I'll give them credit on this, is the Globetrotters would always... all right, when they first meet them, it's just like when they meet all the other celebrities. It's like, oh my God, you know who that is? Kind of deal, and they would team up with them. The other two times, and I will, like I said, I'll give them credit for the whole Globetrotter thing. The Globetrotter trilogy, if you will, is I'll call it here, in the new Scooby-Doo movies. In the other two films, they would, well, not films, but episodes, they would remember who they were. They would. They would remember exactly who they were. And I always will give them credit for that. I always give him credit for that. And there were other people as well. Like you had Don Knotts voicing himself on there in 2 of his appearances. You had Mama Cass. You had Davy Jones. You know, John Reed. You know, the list goes on. But again, like I said, even though they met certain other celebrities like Sonny and Cher and Laurel and Hardy, sometimes you would have to have impersonators doing the voices. That's right. Because like I said, with Laurel and Hardy, I don't know if they were long gone by this time or not. I'm pretty sure they were. You had to have voice actors doing the parts of the characters. Impersonators, if you will. That sounded almost exactly as they were. The same with Sonny and Cher. When I saw that Sonny and Cher had guest starred on there, and I watched the episode, I looked it up on Wikipedia to see if it was them that voiced them, and it wasn't. Instead, it was, well, different characters. It was impersonators that did the voice. And I have to give them credit. These impersonators did a good job. But it wasn't just, but that just wasn't the other unique factor, because this 1 hour series had a lot of unique factors for the 2 seasons it ran. Another unique factor is some of these celebrity guest stars that would show up, they would show up because Hanna-Barbera was basically was not just crossing the Mystery Inc. gang over with these celebrities and all that, but they were crossing them over to get attention for other series that they were doing based around these characters. That's right. For example, Harlem Globetrotters had several series, so they had to cross them over with them to get that series over. To kind of acknowledge that that series was there, so they had to cross them over. I think that was one of the reasons. Same with Laurel and Hardy. I think they had a Hanna-Barbera show based around them, so they crossed them over to get them over. Same with Batman and Robin and the Joker and the Penguin. Here was a crossover with a series in the 1960s that by this time had already been canceled, but was being done to test the waters because Hanna-Barbera was going to be bringing out shows like the Super Friends and all that. So they were testing the waters by having Batman and Robin and the Joker and the Penguin cross over into the Scooby-Doo universe. I'm not lying. As a matter of fact, these episodes with Batman and Robin, which, with twice the appearance for them, they had 2 appearances as well, and the Globetrotters, which had 3, these were so popular that they were given their own separate DVD sets on DVD. That's right. Warner Brothers released these individually as their own sets. All 3 Globetrotter episodes, all Batman and Robin episodes, on their own DVDs. So if you wanted to just watch those specific episodes, there you go. Now, again, though, like I said, these crossovers and these guest appearances weren't just to get over some of these Hanna-Barbera shows that were kind of inspired, if not based, on certain celebrities. Because you had celebrities that were just there as themselves, and there was no spin-offs. Like you had Sandy Duncan in there, and she voiced her own character. She voiced herself. But, speaking of getting shows over, it wasn't just celebrities they would cross over with either. Yeah. In the new one of the unique perspectives of the new Scooby-Doo movies, especially going into the second and final season, was they crossed over with other Hanna-Barbera characters. I'm not lying. They crossed over with other Hanna-Barbera characters and shows. And how do I know this? Because 3 of the most popular ones out of all of those were the ones where the Mystery Inc. gang crossed over with 3 other Hanna-Barbera cartoons. One of the most popular ones was when they crossed over with Josie and the Pussycats. Now, of course, everybody knows that Josie and the Pussycats is an Archie Comics property, but at that time, Hanna-Barbera had gotten the rights, or Archie Comics had licensed out Josie and the Pussycats to Hanna-Barbera to have not 1 but 2 animated shows made. And Hanna-Barbera decided, you know what? And I'm sure they got the okay with Archie, but they decided, you know what? If we really want to get these guys over, and really want people to tune in to the show as well as to probably the new one, let's cross them over in the new Scooby-Doo movies. And that's what they did. And that became one of the more popular, if not the most popular crossover of the entire 2 seasons. And then the other 2 most popular ones, in my opinion, dealt with Speed Buggy. They crossed over with him. And of course, Genie. Now Genie, just like with Josie and the Pussycats, Columbia Pictures or Classic Media, or whoever owns the rights right now, or even back then, whoever owned the rights back then or even now, licensed out the Genie character to Hanna-Barbera to do an animated series of. Now, the only difference was Hanna-Barbera could not get up and do an animated revamp, an animated remake of the sitcom. No, they had to do something different. And what did they do? They followed the same formula that they've dealt with before. Take the character, take that same character, de-age her by a little bit, make her like a teenager, which they did, and then make her master, and then give her a master that obviously is different than what you saw in the sitcom. Give him a best friend, and give him sort of a comedic sidekick. And that's how Genie, the Hanna-Barbera version of Genie, came around. And just like with Josie and the Pussycats, and just like with Speed Buggy, to get attention for those shows, which obviously it worked and did just that. It obviously worked and did just that. That they crossed them over into the new Scooby-Doo movies. Now, like I said earlier at the beginning, when I started talking about the movies, the one thing was they followed, like I've said when I started talking about the new Scooby-Doo movies, they kept the same formula as Where Are You? A formula that would be continuing on for the next couple of shows and incarnations. But there was an exception, and the Genie episode was that exception. That's right, the Genie episode was that exception. Now you might say, well, what about Speed Buggy? Yeah, Speed Buggy, you could probably say is an exception as well, but it was still the same formula of unmasking somebody and finding out it was somebody you least expected, kind of deal. But again, like I said, the Genie episode was the only exception because there was no, there was no person, there was no one under a mask. It was all magic, all supernatural kind of stuff. So, again, that was the only exception. However, to me, that episode with Genie would set the tone for later on down the line. Now, after the new Scooby-Doo movies, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And the new Scooby-Doo movies would rerun for a while. And then there was a conflict, in kind of an internal business conflict with CBS or something like that. And CBS had lost the rights to Scooby-Doo. CBS did not lose any rights with Hanna-Barbera to air any other show. They just lost the rights to Scooby-Doo. So, a few years later, Scooby's All-Star Laugh Olympics debuts. And it debuts on ABC, the new home of Scooby-Doo. And it would be the home for Scooby-Doo for over 10 years, for around 10 years. And again, just like with the new Scooby-Doo movies, this too had a new concept. It became the first ever 2-hour Saturday morning cartoon series. But it wasn't just, one cartoon episode that ran for 2 hours. No, it was a compilation of several different elements in that 2 hours. Thus, the title of Scooby's All-Star Laugh Olympics. One of the elements was Scooby-Doo, the Scooby-Doo Show, which debuted in 1976, I should say. So, Scooby-Doo Show, what came before? Scooby-Doo Show actually came before 77. So, the Scooby-Doo Show, let's talk about that a little bit, because it was integrated into Laugh Olympics the following season. But the Scooby-Doo Show basically followed the same formula as Where Are You? And even the movies as well. But the difference was the Scooby-Doo Show in 1976 introduced us to the offspring, or not offspring, but the relatives and cousins of Scooby-Doo. Now here's the thing though. Back when these cousins debuted, they did not go by the last names of Doo, as we would be later introduced to later on. But they would be introduced with the names of Scooby. And they would have different last names, representing who they were. And the first new character we were introduced to was That's right, Scooby-Dum. And he went on to be, I think, a little bit more popular than even Scrappy. And he became sort of like the new, I guess you could say, sixth wheel, if you will, of the group. He became basically the newest on and off member of Mystery Inc. I think after his debut episode, he became more he basically tagged along from that moment forward, if you know what I mean. And he was funny. I'll give him that. He was basically, the thing about Scooby-Dum was he was always into solving mysteries. He was always solving mysteries and all that, but he kind of still was like Scooby. He was cowardly and all that, but he was still kind of trying to act brave and trying to be a detective and a mystery solver. And at times it would work, and most times it would backfire. But always the unique element about Scooby-Dum was anytime somebody said, we got to look for clues, or we have a mystery to solve, Scooby-Dum would be like, clues? Bring out a magnifying glass and look around and try to find clues, and he would find something that he thought was a clue, but wasn't. Kind of get the idea? And then, of course, Scooby-Dum wasn't the only Scooby relative introduced in the Scooby-Doo show. I think it was the following season in 1977 when it got integrated into Laugh Olympics, and I'll finally get into that in a minute. Another cousin was introduced, and that was the first female Scooby cousin, and that was Scooby-Dee. And Scooby-Dee, even though she appeared for one episode, actually has quite a fan base following, if you know what I mean. But Scooby-Dee was basically this movie starlet that was very sweet, very kind, was very appreciative of her cousins. And you might say, well, why in the world is her cousins in love with her with the cousins? Again, well, long story short, Scooby-Dee was supposed to be presented sort of as a love interest, like a girlfriend. And if you really want the complications of it, real life wise, They may be cousins, but when far as animals are concerned, if you're a male and you're a female, there can still be an attraction, if you know what I mean. But anyway, she was very sweet. Anyway, Scooby-Doo was very sweet, very kind. And even though she had one episode, she has developed quite the fan following. She has. I think her episode, which is the Chiller Dealer, or the Chiller Movie Dealer, Chiller Dealer Movie Thriller, or something like that, is one of the more popular Scooby-Doo show episodes. But again, even with that, the show followed the same formula as Where Are You? And then, like I said, in the season that she was introduced, it was integrated into the now Scooby-Doo or Scooby's All-Star Laugh Olympics. And again, as I was mentioning earlier, All-Star Laugh Olympics was the first 2-hour Saturday morning cartoon series. However, the difference was, as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't one cartoon episode that ran for 2 hours. No, it was a compilation of different episodes. It was. You see, the compilation was of different shows, I should say. The compilation was, it consisted of Scooby-Doo, the Scooby-Doo show. It consisted of a new show called Captain Caveman and Teen Angels. It consisted of Dynamite and Blue Falcon, who actually debuted, I think, the year before with Scooby-Doo show for a 1-hour block, where they shared 1 half hour and the Scooby-Doo show shared the other half hour. And then, of course, the Laugh Olympics episode. Now, All-Star Laugh Olympics, or later dubbed Laugh Olympics, would only last for about 2 years. The following year, it got cut down to about an hour and just focused mainly on the Laugh Olympics itself for a full hour. And then throughout the year, it would be rebroadcast and reruns. Well, after Scooby's All-Star Laugh Olympics, we were introduced to a new incarnation of Scooby-Doo, still following the same formula as before, but this time was dubbed Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, and it thus introduced us to Scooby-Doo's nephew, Scrappy-Doo. Now, you might say to yourself, well, why was Scrappy-Doo, who has gone on to be one of the more controversial characters in kind of mixed react and kind of gets a mixed reaction from the fan base, if you will. Kind of more, like I said, kind of more controversial, if not more mixed reacted characters that they had. Why did they introduce him? Why was he introduced? Well, here's the way I look at it. Scooby-Dum and Dee were introduced in the Scooby-Doo show, to me, as a testing ground to see how fans would react to maybe having a fifth dog around. And obviously the fan reaction to having a fifth dog, Doo or Scooby, was positive enough to where they said, okay, let's bring in a character that's basically Scooby's nephew, but unlike Scooby and Shaggy, is more braver than both and would rather fight the ghost instead of back away. But still be smart enough to say, okay, I need to back away. And that's how Scrappy-Doo came to be. The uniqueness about Scrappy-Doo, again, just like what say Scooby-Dum, is he always was, I guess if you like the character, he was always trying to do his best. He was. He was always trying to do his best to help out. I mean, here's what he would do. He would set traps sometimes, and sometimes the traps would work, but most of the times they would blow up in his face. Because if not most times, it would trap the gang, the Mystery Inc. gang, instead of who it was intended for. So, he kind of was like, he was a brave little guy, but his intentions were good, but they just most of the time didn't work. Now, again, the Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo show for the first season ran with the same formula as the other seasons and incarnations had before. And then, the following season, excuse me while I go get a drink. Sorry about that, folks. I don't have a fridge in my room, or a mini fridge. I had to go to the kitchen to get a drink. But like I was saying, even though the first season of Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo show followed that same formula as the other incarnations had before it, in 1980 to about 82, they decided to go with a new formula. Basically, there was rumors going around, according to several sources, that Hanna-Barbera for a time wanted to do away with Fred, Daphne, and Velma and just have Scooby, Shaggy, and Scrappy on their own. And that's what they did. So for several incarnations or several different shows, they had about 7 to 8 minute like Looney Tunes shorts. And basically the situation was Shaggy and the dogs were working for his Uncle Fearless's detective agency. And now at times, a lot of these 7 to 8 minute shorts would end exactly as the classic Where Are You stuff, where somebody would be in a mask. The only difference was they mixed in elements of a lot of what they encountered to be real, like monsters and ghosts and stuff like that. Now, these episodes ran alongside other shows for an hour. They would basically use the hour format, and they would basically run for about an hour. The other shows that they would work with, or air alongside with, would be Richie Rich, which would be dubbed the Scooby-Doo Richie Rich Hour, and The Puppy, as they called it, called Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo Puppy Hour. Now, I was also doing these runs for the past few years. During this run from about 81 to 82, 83, that they also introduced a new character, another Doo character, if you will, called Yabba-Doo. And he, along with his owner, were basically, I guess you could say, the Western, the Old West, if not Western cousins of Shaggy and Scooby. And basically, they would be the sheriffs of a town where they try to keep the law. But just like with Shaggy and Scooby, the sheriff would be a little bit of a coward, while Yabba was kind of a little bit like that, but was more like Scrappy, more brave, more like let's get it done kind of deal. And here was the unique part about this. Scrappy, I guess to get him over with the crowd even more so, was put into these episodes along with Yabba-Doo. Yeah. He was put into these episodes along with Yabba-Doo and his owner. And again, this continued on up until about 82, 83. And it was between these times, between 81, 82, that I'm pretty sure development was being done on the next Scooby-Doo incarnation, which would debut in 1983. And this one was called this next incarnation was dubbed the all-new Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo show. And it, along with the following season and the next show after it, became, obviously in the eyes of many, the top 3, if not one of the top 3 or top 15 or 10 or whatever you want to call it, Scooby-Doo shows of all time. And the reason being is because they went back to the formula they had done before, the Where Are You formula. The people under a mask and all that. But they also mixed in a bit of the supernatural where, the monsters and ghosts they would encounter would be real as well. But they also shortened it. Now, they didn't shorten it to the lengths of the 7 to 8 minute shorts they did the previous few seasons. No, they were actually split into 2 11-minute episodes. And the reason these 3 became obviously some of my personal favorites, as well as the personal favorites of many fans, is because they brought back, as I read up online, in places like Wikipedia and other sources, the all-new Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo show, along with its following season, which was dubbed the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries, and then 13 Ghosts, which came after it. Basically, these 3 shows, more importantly, the first season, if you will, the all-new Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo show, was put together because, according to several sources, Hanna-Barbera, the creators behind it, wanted to combine all the popular elements of the previous Scooby-Doo franchise, of the Scooby-Doo shows in incarnations. And one of the more popular elements, obviously, that they wanted to add back in was Daphne. That's right, Daphne was added back in. You would think, okay, they could add Velma, they could add Fred, they could add somebody new. No, they added Daphne because she was and still is one of the more popular characters alongside Shaggy and Scooby. So they brought her in, and she sort of was, I guess you could say, given more of a leadership role, more of a role modelish kind of role, because basically she was allowed to, the character was finally allowed to be fleshed out and given more to do, given more potential, given more responsibility. And and a lot of people like this because what it did was it kind of gave you an idea of exactly why in the Scooby-verse, if you will, the Scooby-Doo verse, or the Scooby universe, why the gang split up and what they had been doing. And obviously Daphne was preparing to be a reporter. And obviously she had become a reporter, a bit of a junior reporter. And thus she kind of tagged along, or had Scooby and Shaggy tag along with her, or something. But it was really a really unique concept, and people liked it. People enjoyed it. They really did. They liked it and they enjoyed it. And again, this goes on to be, and again, they liked it. They just liked the concept. Again, it was basically the same format that had been dealt with before, but it was the fact that it was being done with a mixture of being real and not real kind of deal. And again, they consisted it down mostly to 11-minute shorts. Sometimes they do a half hour here and there, but mostly it was 11 minutes. It was mostly 11 minutes. Which was really cool. And of course, this started, which has been dubbed even to this day, the Shaggy, Daphne support and shippers. Basically, as a lot of fans look at it, as soon as all new Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo show started to the end of 13 Ghosts, and even to this day, they looked at and confirmed that Shaggy and Daphne became a couple. End of story, as they would say. And it might be true. But anyway, this ran for one season under the name of All New Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo Show. We were introduced, I think, in one of the finale episodes, I think it was Wedding Bell Booze, to Shaggy's sister and his side of the family, as well as to a new Doo in Whoopsie-Doo. And then, the following season, it was renamed the New Scooby-Doo Mysteries. And the animation, I will admit, was a little better, more colorful, still the same format, but again, still the same format as before, person under a mask and all that, but with a mixture of some of the things being supernatural and real. But another thing about it, too, was there were several episodes. The difference, though, about this season, about this new season, if you will, dubbed the New Scooby-Doo Mysteries, the biggest difference was you had a lot of episodes, and I mentioned this in the cartoon flashback episode where I talked about it. You had a majority of the time, you'd have a lot of episodes, even though they'd be one story, one 22-minute to half-hour story, they'd be separated in two by parts, sort of like a chapter. It's like you would be done one chapter, they go to commercial break, you come back, here's the next chapter, kind of deal. And that's what they did. So for example, Um, there's several ones like um, a night louse at the White House. It's, we all knew it was one episode, but they separated it by 2 parts, sort of like chapters during commercial breaks. Basically, what it was is the episode would run for in the entirety of 11 minutes. It's like, okay, you would have the intro, you'd probably have a commercial, and then you do the episode for 11 minutes. Then you do the first part for 11 minutes, go to commercial, do the next part for the next 11 minutes, or something like that. But the other unique perspective of this, and it kind of gets a mixed reaction itself, was the inclusion in several episodes of the other Mystery Inc. gang members. That's right. The first episode of this new season, Happy Birthday Scooby-Doo, showed the guest starring return of Fred and Velma. They basically returned to celebrate Scooby-Doo's birthday, is what they did. They returned to celebrate Scooby-Doo's birthday. And then the other episode that had the 2 of them in there, in fact, there were 2 episodes that had them in it. You had a Halloween Hassle at Dracula's Castle, where the monsters were real for the first time to them. Then you had the Ghosts of the Astronauts episode, where basically a lot was going on there. A lot of the zombies and ghosts and stuff was real to them there. And then, of course, you had several episodes where the characters would just appear individually. I think Velma only had like 1 episode where she was the guest star. And she, it was basically the episode I mentioned just moments ago, Night Louse at the White House. And then you had Fred appear in 2 episodes, which was a Nutcracker Scoob, which was a Christmas episode. And, of course, you had something of a Sherlock Jones episode or something like that. So, yeah, they basically again, that was the unique perspective of this one. The uniqueness of the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries season was the fact that you had the other Mystery Inc. gang guest starring on the show and basically going back to the original format in some ways. But what was different about this is, and I got to give them credit, even though you had the characters return, their adventures were more opened and were more expanded on, more adventurous, basically more to what you had gotten used to in the 80s as far as Saturday morning cartoons were concerned. So, again, that was a great, unique perspective. And sometimes they would do half-hour episodes, like Wedding Bell Booze in, the previous season. Sometimes they would do it to where it would just be Daphne, Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy, and that was it. And people liked it. Well, after that, in 1985 to about 87, we had another incarnation of Scooby-Doo, and this was dubbed the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. It was a lot dark, and it was darker than the previous ones. It was darker, and it was definitely more based on the supernatural. It starred the voice of Vincent Price as Vincent Van Gool, and it was basically the same characters again. It was Daphne, Shaggy, Scooby, Scrappy, along with a new character in Flim Flam, a little con artist kid, and it was to me, for 13 episodes, it was really, really good. I thought it was unique. I mean, they basically traveled the world with the Mystery Flying Machine or the Mystery Machine itself. Mystery Machine got a huge makeover. I mean, I definitely mean huge if you want to look at it like that. Daphne herself got a huge makeover. I mean, no longer did she have the headband and all that and the long hair. Her hair was basically curled out a little bit shorter. She was basically finally given what was known as a more modernized 80s look. She had overalls and stuff like that at times. Basically, she was given an all-new 80s look. Shaggy was given a new outfit in red and blue. So, red shirt, blue jeans. So, and that kind of became Shaggy's norm, especially when they started doing the Superstar 10 movies of Scooby-Doo. But again, and of course that look would return in the Cyber Chase movie, which would basically be representing his digital self. But again, it was good. The unfortunateness about 13 Ghosts, though, was it ended on a cliffhanger. And so far, it's the only Scooby-Doo show starring Daphne, Scooby, Scrappy, and Shaggy to be released on DVD as a complete series. Scooby-Doo Mystery, the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries, and the all-new Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo show have yet. All-new Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo shows on iTunes, but people want it on DVD. And I think eventually we will get it. It's just going to take time. Well, after that, we ended up in a sort of, I guess you could say, 1987 to about 90 or 89 or whatever was very different for Scooby for a while. Because basically we were given a pup named Scooby-Doo. And this was basically based on the fact that Hanna-Barbera was following a trend that was started by Jim Henson. See, Jim Henson, as everybody knows, introduced us to the Muppet Babies, the babyfied version of the Muppets. So they decided to follow that. Hanna-Barbera decided to follow in that format with the Flintstone Kids. And then second up was Pup Named Scooby-Doo. And this obviously became the more popular out of all of them because it's got its own DVD complete series release, as far as I know. And again, like I said, as far as I know, it's got its own complete series release. And it was different because it sort of had a Tex Avery style to it. And it was kind of controversial because basically no one really, okay, it did establish where they came from, which was Coolsville. It did establish the city and town they had come from as Coolsville. I'll give them that. It did establish that. But the thing about it was, the controversy was the timeline. If it was supposed to be based like around the 50s and 60s, then why was there computers? Why was there digital stuff at that time that didn't exist back then? Kind of stuff like that. It was still the same formula as, okay, it's a person under a mask. But it was, it was just basically very different. Obviously, it was popular, but, after that, we hadn't, it was just, it's just like, you didn't know what to expect with it. It was that different. Really, it was that different. And I think a Pup Named Scooby-Doo, it was interactive at times because that was basically the theme in the theme song, where they say you can help solve the crime, and you have Daphne and Fred point to the screen and say you can help us. So it's kind of interactive. But to me, I think it was made more based on comedic value. They wanted to do more a comedic version of Scooby-Doo, and that's what they did. So it was okay. I watched it. It was okay. It was funny at times, but when you look back on it now, it's like, why? What? Just to show that they did mysteries when they were kids? Okay, fine. You could have done it a little bit more differently. Anyway, obviously it was popular enough to where people did watch it, and it ran for several seasons. Then after that, of course, Scooby kind of died off a little bit as far as series were concerned. And he really didn't get a new official series until about early 2000s with What's New Scooby-Doo. And What's New Scooby-Doo followed the same formula as Where Are You? And what was funny about it was What's New Scooby-Doo was actually based off of the animated films. As well, it was based off a little bit of what was What's New Scooby-Doo. Well, not What's New, but of the Scooby-Doo live-action movie. Came out, I think, came around a little before, if not after that. It came out around that time frame. So it was really cool, and I thought it was good. I thought it was one of the better ones. I really did. It it followed the same formula as before, but it gave the characters more personality. It gave them more. It basically gave them more personality. It gave them more. It gave them more charisma. Is what it did. It gave them more charisma. So. And I really liked that. And it ran for several seasons. It became one of the more popular ones. I know some people may not like it, but it became more popular. It did have some guest stars in it. It had some spin-off specials like Christmas and Halloween. I mean, it had guest stars. Like I said, they had Kiss in there. They had Mike Piazza. You know, the list can go on. And then after that, we had a new series, which was kind of one of the more hated ones, called Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue. The animation was different, but it wasn't really accepted as well as people would hope for. And then finally, we had what was known recently as Mystery Incorporated. And Mystery Incorporated was played out basically as being, to me, in my opinion, because I actually now do have the first 3 volumes of season 1 on DVD. But to me, when I watched several of the episodes, or kind of took some quick glimpses of them here and there, to me, Mystery Incorporated was played out as basically more of not just a revamp and a reboot, but was played out basically as a junior teen, if not teen, novel come to life. Because every episode would be a chapter, just like I mentioned with what the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries. But these weren't separated by 11 minutes. No, these were full episodes. The title of the episode would be dubbed as a chapter. You know, like chapter 1, chapter 2 kind of stuff. And when I looked at this, I said to myself, you know what? It seems to be based more off of a junior teen, if not teenage novel. That's what it seems to be, looks like it's based off of or has been inspired by. Now, I'm not saying Mystery Incorporated wasn't very popular. It was. I mean, I'll give it credit for going in directions and being darker and doing things normally you wouldn't have seen before in Scooby-Doo. But still, it has its criticism, because a lot of people look at it and say, this is not Mystery Incorporated. This is not Mystery Inc. This is not Scooby-Doo, you know, blah, 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 blah. And everybody's got a right to their opinion. So, you know, and a lot of people look at it like, okay, basically Hanna-Barbera, well, not Hanna-Barbera, but look at it like Warner Brothers is using this to shove certain things into our faces and down our throats that we don't want to accept. We don't think is canon. We don't want to even consider being canon. You know, like they would say, they're shoving Fred and Daphne as a couple down our throats. We don't consider it canon. They're trying to shove Shaggy and Velma down our throats as a couple. It's not canon. So, to me, I think, to me, it's more along the lines of, you know, to me, it's more along the lines of it's more along the lines that Mystery Incorporated, again, has kind of getting a mixed reaction, and has become very controversial, and again, has gotten a mixed reaction. And as I look at it, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree, I mean, I think it's okay. I mean, I'll give them credit, and I talked about this in a video before, and you can look it up here online. Just go, on my channel, just type in Mystery Incorporated, or just type in Mystery or whatever, and I talk about it, and I'll give it credit what it's due, because they did things and went into directions that no one else thought they would go in. But as I've mentioned before, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me, because as I just talked about, it was every episode was separated as a chapter. So like a chapter in a teenage novel or a junior teen novel. And that's, I think, the problem that a lot of fans had with Mystery Incorporated. That basically this series, for the 2 seasons that it was on, 2 to 3 seasons it was on, or actually 2 seasons that it was on, was being played out as a teenage novel. Was being presented as a junior teen, if not teenage novel, on the screen, and that by presenting it in that way, showcased that it was not Mystery Incorporated. So, not a lot of, so obviously it got a mixed reaction. It became controversial. So, you know, and the way it ended, a lot of people have said, we've seen this before in other shows. You know, it doesn't make sense, or it makes sense. You know, basically it's just, like I say, mixed react. This show, this latest incarnation of Scooby-Doo basically got the most mixed reaction, if not the most controversy to come out of it. So, again, though, I thought it was okay. And again, I'll give him credit. But I haven't watched the entire series that much. I have to sit down and watch it and take my time to see exactly why people don't like it and why people do like it. But overall, Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo has gone through a lot of different television show incarnations. Most of them good, some of them bad. And if I was to rank, again, my top 5, and I did a top 10 on this, but if I was to rank a top 5, if not a top 3, I'd have to go with, obviously, all new Scooby-Doo show / Scooby-Doo all new Scooby-Doo show, Scooby-Doo Mysteries, 13 Ghosts, What's New, and I think it'd be a tie between Scooby-Doo show and the Scooby-Doo movies. So, those are the ones I would look at. And again, I'll have to look at my top 10 countdown to see if I'm correct on that. And you guys could check that out too here on my channel. But, on my top 5 or whatever. But again, he's gone through a lot of incarnations. And there's probably more to come in the future. And we'll just have to wait and see exactly what Warner Brothers has in store for Scooby-Doo. So, thank you all for listening. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with what I said, looking back at the Scooby-Doo franchise and its different Scooby-Doo television, TV incarnations or TV shows? Let me know what you guys think. Comment down below, and I'll talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care. Time to drink me some Coke.